Meeting to order. It's the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, held on November 6th, 2012 at 6 p.m. at the City Council Chambers Building. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Dowling?
Here.
Councilmember Alinsky is absent. Councilmember Howdigi?
Here.
Councilmember Norman?
Here.
Councilmember Pratt?
Here.
Vice Mayor Piper?
Here.
Mayor Jones?
Here. The next item is Pledge of Allegiance, and we have Debbie Breichreitz with us tonight to lead us in the pledge. If everyone would stand.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a certificate for you.
Actually looking forward to the sewer department replacement.
Mark Boyd, right here.
Yeah, you probably understand all that being an
A little.
engineer.
A little.
So the council would like to give Debbie this certificate of thanks for being such a good citizen. Thanks, Debbie. Next, we have a brief summary of current events by the mayor, city council, and city manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during this summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Mr. Bartosh.
Madam Mayor, council members, just a report on Halloween night. It was a very safe night, particularly here in Old Town, where the Old Town Association passed out 750 pounds of candy until they ran out.
Wow.
And they anticipate that they're going to have to buy more next year, but it was a very successful night. So, and as well as our fall festival, which goes on behind City Hall, a lot of in attendance, and they really enjoyed it. This weekend is Walking on Main from 11 to 5 in Old Town, and we will have Main Street closed for Saturday, or at least a portion of Saturday. And so just be aware of that, but it'll be a fun time for everybody. And then on Sunday, we have a Professional Disc Golf Association sanctioned disc golf tournament, and the proceeds from that will go to support the Veterans Home over in Prescott, and we are also collecting what do they call those necessities for the veterans over in the home as well. And you can find donation boxes at several city buildings throughout the city. Just a reminder, everybody, that the rec center will be closed from November 18th to the 25th for our annual cleaning, and so just plan ahead. And then also we will be doing a general plan open house tomorrow night and Thursday night, 6 o'clock at the rec center. So we encourage people to please come out and take a look at how the city is planned to develop, or the way it will develop, and give us your input. And then just a reminder that Mingus Avenue will be closed from Willard to Highway 89A until Thursday morning. Sometime Thursday. They are paving it, and the quickest way to get that done was to close it, so they can just get it done and open the road, and it'll be fantastic. And that's it, Madam Mayor.
Council? Vice Mayor?
He was first.
Okay, Mr.
Yep. I just wanted to add to Walking on Main Street. It will be a lot of fun. There's going to be 6 or 7 of the local wineries will be there that have had a great effect on our culture and our economy. A lot of artists, our retail shops will be open. And if nothing else, come for the music. There's going to be terrific music at that event. It should be good.
I've been letting my Facebook friends in Phoenix know about it.
And it was featured in an article in the Arizona Republic.
That's right.
Yes, it
the
was.
manager forwarded. Also, a week from today, November 13th, Yavapai College, the Verde Valley campus of Yavapai College, will be having its community event, and they've invited people from the community to come on up at 4:30 to see the renovations that have gone on. They've spent over $17 million renovating the campus, so if you can get out there, come on up, and you can get a chance to win some free classes as well. And there will be tours of the new facility, so we're really excited about that.
Thank you so much for reminding us of that very important event.
Yeah.
Our college is appreciated in a very special place. We have to educate our public and work to provide jobs. That's the key word lately, is jobs, jobs, jobs everywhere I go. So thank you for Yavapai College's part in ensuring that we have a good economy.
Yeah.
Any other council members? Vice Mayor?
I don't know how many people remember Al Slusser, but he's on his third walk that I'm aware of. He did first see the shining sea from the Pacific to the Atlantic. He walks it. He now has a little cart that he pulls behind him. And he's also done a walk from Key West to Canada. And it's usually for food drives or Veterans Affairs or something to benefit some faction of our community. And he was here a couple Fridays ago. He went to the radio at Yavapai Broadcasting. We were down there. He and I were on the radio a short time. And Al and I worked together over 20 years ago, and so I personally know him. He's a great guy. But right now he's walking from Utah to Mexico, and all of the food and all of the money that he earns for that walk is going to the local food banks wherever he makes the money in that community. They're going to distribute the food and the money to those communities. So he's been in the Verde Valley a long time. He calls Cottonwood his home, and so we walked from the radio station. I thought I was going to join him down there and take a short walk. Well, we ended up all the way up by the Mission, by way of Willard Avenue, down to Mingus, back up Candy Lane, and then off to the Mission from the radio station.
You walked all of that?
Not too many people showed. Me and another lady showed up, and I carried my great-granddaughter Bailey, who is 18.2 ounces, for part of it, and my granddaughter sort of followed us. So after I got as far as Reese's Tire, I handed the baby off, and we just kept walking. And it was a nice walk. It took a long time. Mark Pelletier from the Mission was in and out of the walk with his van, and he had other meetings going. But it was really a lot of fun and good catching up with Al. We haven't had time to talk, and we had lots of time to talk that Friday. And so I think you can follow him on Facebook. I don't have the link, but you can see where he is. You can donate money. You can donate anything you need to his cause. And then I also was at the community cleanup a couple weekends ago, and it went well. The newspaper's been covering that, and it's been on the websites. And then last Friday I was at a summit for transitional housing for the homeless.
Oh,
They're getting started on that and gearing up on that one too. So they've got some really
attending.
great ideas, and a lot of people working on it. A lot of good people. So that's all I've done.
And I would just like to say thank you so much, because I've been gone so much and you've been putting in triple duty. So thank you. I appreciate you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
It's been fun.
Yeah, and you also do a lot of the ribbon cuttings
Oh yeah, there's a few
with the
of those.
chamber, and so you're much appreciated
Thank you.
for the time. Yes.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, I was going to say I got to attend I was fortunate enough to attend the French Flair event up at the college, at the Verde Valley campus. Thanks to the mayor, she couldn't make it, so I stood in for her. And it was a really neat event, really well done. It's really nice to see what that campus is becoming and the direction they're taking. And also, our local high school football team made it past the first round of playoffs, so we're in the second round.
Congratulations.
It was a nail biter, but it was. I heard one of the kids run off of the field and scream, "I feel like I won the state championship." So I said, "Well, you got a little ways to go yet. Good job." The next game will actually be down in Phoenix at Apollo High School at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. I believe that's around 40th Street and Northern anyway, it's always nice to have a nice big crowd from home show up there. So
Congratulations to our team.
yeah.
Oh, yes, Vice
On
Mayor.
our walk with Al, the reason we left 89A and went down to Mingus Avenue, we picked up a classroom at the Verde Baptist Church. And they walked with us from there over to Candy Lane and then up to the Mission. So we did pick up a classroom full of kids.
Great. I think Al's daughter works there.
Al's daughter is the teacher.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's great to get the kids involved in that
That was
kind
a
of
lot of
thing.
fun when the kids started pulling the
Right.
wagon.
That's fantastic. Well, just to add a little bit more to the cleanup, I was out of town I'm a fellow at the Flynn Brown Leadership Academy, so I've been out of town most Thursdays and Fridays for a couple of months now. And again, I want to thank all the council members who have been pitch hitting for activities in the community. We're going to have an awards ceremony, I think, on the 13th for the cleanup. But I would just like to thank City Manager Doug Bartosh and his staff. Here's a picture, council, of some of the tires that were, and they even had to pay a little bit for the tires. There was a small charge. Whatever the county charged us, we charged them. I couldn't believe that this many tires still came in, even with a small charge. And then here's a picture of all the stuff. And as I understand it, was it 15 bins? Dan Luder's shaking his head, yes. All 15 bins were filled by noon. And we had to get 8 more. 8 more and 4 dump truck loads. And he did inform the city manager that he thinks they went over budget. So if we go over budget, we know how successful that is. And Yavapai County, Jeff Darling reported that the county and the Verde Village they filled 13 40-yard bins, and at approximately 6 tons per bin, that gave them 78 tons. Plus, I do believe some of the community service workers from the city of Cottonwood, Judge Lasoda sent some out, and they had quite a few volunteers out at the river. For their part of it, we cleaned up the city and they cleaned up the river area. So it was a great collaboration among 2 communities. We worked really well together. There's lots of information about all of the businesses, Taylor Waste, and the churches, and the private individuals that helped with this massive cleanup. And I'll do a little presentation for council for the 13th, so you can see even more pictures of this great event. And I think the city manager do you still have plans to do it twice a year, or are you thinking about?
We probably need to talk about that a little bit. You know, we're a little bit concerned that, you know, we're taking in a whole lot of trash from outside the city. And the other downside, which I don't think there's really a serious downside, but it does impact our transfer station too. And we certainly don't want to teach people to hold everything for 6 months until we do a cleanup. We want them to be cleaning constantly. So
Right.
we need to talk about that probably at the follow-up meeting and make sure that we're not working against what our true objective is to make sure that city is clean as much as possible.
Right, and our neighborhood revitalization initiative, trying to have spick and span neighborhoods if possible. But yes, there's always things you have to weigh whenever you do projects like that. So we'll bring that back to the city council and the public next week, and we'll give out some certificates. We had a couple of people that won the bikes that Walmart donated, and so there's more to the story, and we'll save it for the next meeting. Thank you all very much. The next item is call to the public. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that's not officially on the agenda for discussion or action per ARS 38-431-02H. Comments are limited to a 5-minute time period. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? If not, we'll close the floor to the public. Our next item is presentation, review of recent upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant headworks. And we had some really fantastic pictures. Just to let everyone know that anything that's in the council's packet can be picked up or downloaded from the city's website. It's cottonwoodaz.gov. So anything we have on our agenda tonight, you can get the backup information on our website. It's there for the public to see in our effort to be very transparent to the public. And also we have the verdivalleytv.com, and you can see different programs and council meetings on that if you don't have the channel 2. Doug?
Madam Mayor, if you're ready, I'd like to go ahead and introduce this. Are you ready?
Sure. And so the city manager is going to introduce this presentation.
When Debbie sent this to me, and when I looked at it, I thought, you know, a lot of times we all take for granted that when we walk in and flush our toilet, that it's all handled
We don't want to know, right?
That's
we don't
right.
want to know.
But I think it is important for citizens to understand, one, where their money's going in terms of these kind of services, and kind of how important it is to upgrade our wastewater facilities every now and then to make sure that they are working appropriately. So I just thought this would be a nice quick presentation for the council and the public to see.
And I'd like to personally thank you for that. I think it's very important that the council sees these kinds of things, and I totally agree with you, and it's education for the public too. Thank you.
Lets everybody know where their monies
Absolutely
go.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Brightwaits?
Thank you. Thank you, Deb, actually. Good evening. Apparently, if you do PowerPoint presentations and send them to your boss, he sends them to everybody else. So you're going to put them to the council. So this is fun. Basically, this was a project that started in January. The council approved the washer screen compactor. And this is just a quick overview, kind of what actually took place, what we were doing with this project. It did take a lot of departments and a lot of different individuals to get this project done. There was a gap in there, you'll notice, between January and August. And the reason being is this screen and the compactor are custom fitted to our channel, which you'll see later. And we're not just buying something off the shelf, they actually customize this to actually fit, meaning that it's going to work better. And that was just part of the... We continued on to the timeline, and basically it started in January, we ended it in October. And a lot of things happened in between. We had to do a lot of modifications with the building, a lot of getting the old fine screen out. We did a major bypass because all of the wastewater that comes into the plant had to be bypassed around the headworks.
That sounds like it was a real fun project.
That was a very major part of this project. We had to get the new screen in, make sure all the plumbing and electrical were there, and actually then go ahead and get training commissioned on it. So we did the last part of this within basically 8 days. We bypassed for 9 days. We actually did a majority of the hauling and moving and everything in 8 days. And that was a time crunch, but there was no other time that we could do it. And you don't want to bypass for any longer than that.
So did you or anyone on your team get any sleep that week?
No, actually. My staff started, and it did say on the timeline, my staff started doing a 24-hour pump watch, basically, on this, starting September 30th to October 8th. Actually, October 9th in the morning. So staff was working around the clock 24 hours a day to actually get this done.
Thank you.
We did some building modifications. This actually Scott Mangipan worked on, along with Chris Fanowski. The architecture and Total Building Systems actually put this in. There used to be This used to be a window. We did double doors over here too. Double doors right there. They pivot 180 degrees. The railings come off. This is actually helping us in a way to be less of a confined space because that atmosphere in there is a hazardous atmosphere. We had an ingress and egress problem. We had an ingress egress problem. We only had one door. This door right here was the only door we had, and the rest were windows. So we decided to put 2 doors in. It also helps with equipment hauling.
And safety.
Yeah, and the safety as far as the ingress and egress of the confined space. And then we made a little door window here. I'll have to ask Scott what's actually it. The old fine screen. The old fine screen was put in 2000. That fine screen, other than it wasn't the correct screen for the place where it was put, basically it. And it was costing me upwards from about $6,000 per screen, and I was replacing screens every 4 to 6 months. The screen would just wear out because of where it was. Wrong application. So, and it was a different type of screen. This is a rotating screw auger. There's an actual auger under here, and the inorganic materials come out the top of it. Go ahead.
I just, and the purpose of this whole thing is really to save wear and tear on the rest of the system, right? This sort of gets some of the parts, the stuff that could break the machinery down, it
Correct.
Separates out early.
Yeah, I should have prefaced that. Actually, wastewater is 99% water,
Right.
1% inorganic material,
Gotcha.
rags, so on and so forth. The headworks is actually the phase that takes all that out. And it helps everything downstream in the process. It also helps the process because they don't have to try to absorb anything that's not organic material. This is the bypass. It was 2 12-inch pumps in a very small section over here that we had to put it in. It was a 36-inch manhole that we put this into. They pumped all the way around the headworks and into one of our basins over here. It was quite a sight to see when both those pumps would come on. We do have, our peak flow is basically, just when the pumps come on at lift station 4, our peak flow is 2 to 3 MGD. So just in that instant where then it goes down again, and that actually lifted that entire pipe section up and down.
And for the public, MGD means million gallons.
Million gallons per day. I
per day.
forget. Nobody speaks in acronyms. This is the channel before. This channel was obviously done in 2000. You'll notice on the corner here, corner over here, there's a lot of concrete degradation. There was 2 inches that they ended up having to fill on that. So the concrete had degraded that much. The wing walls, which are these right here, we actually had to jackhammer out to have the new screen actually be able to fit into there. So that was, and Kenny Construction Services did the channel rehab.
Kenny Constructions, okay.
They're one of our guys.
Mm-hmm, right.
And we put a specific mortar on there that's acid resistant and reinforced with calcium aluminate. It provides a suitable surface for the epoxy that we're going to put on it. But if you look at the last picture and then look at this picture, I mean, this is like brand new. To me, it was like, look, the walls are straight. And then we have the aqua epoxy. This is just an epoxy lining. We've done we've done 1 manhole with this, and our clarifiers are lined with this as well. And what it is basically, it's at a really high tensile strength epoxy coating, and the substrate, meaning the concrete, will actually fail before this does. So this will still be standing, the concrete will be going away. And I don't know why I picked white as a color. Don't ask me. They didn't offer many colors.
Maybe black or brown would have been nicer.
Yeah.
High contrast.
High contrast, yeah. We wanted to see what was coming in. This is the new influent flow screen. It's Hydrodyne low-flow Trident screen. Like I said, this was manufactured, customized to our channel. It has a laced link grid with a 6mm opening. The washing compactor is the next part of it, maybe. There. Go back. Oh, anyway. How do you go back?
Back arrow.
There we go. That's the washing compactor. That's where the actual solids are put into an auger and taken out. That's a new fine screen installed, and trust me, this was a lot of work to actually get the old one out and get the new one in. You'll notice it's in a building. We were reaching lifts through the windows trying to lift this up. This is a very large piece of machinery. Trying to get it all in place and actually make it fit together was quite interesting. From the back, I was having a good time taking pictures. The discharge chute comes out the window before it was actually enclosed in the building. What we're doing now is we're actually fabricating a structure on the top, and it will go into a hopper with a dust cover on it so you don't have the odors. And we're actually getting that done right now. Before it was all done inside the Works building. And it was ready for startup. You notice the long chute that goes out the window. We can no longer walk that way, but we're okay with it.
I could.
And it works. I was very excited that it works, and you notice no corn, so that's good. It must be a low corn day there, right there.
Did you hear the vice mayor?
What?
It's her opinion that she thought she could still walk there.
You should be. No, actually. But we were very happy when it was done, and we were very impressed that it actually works as well as it does. It's continuing to work as well as it does. And like I said, I was ecstatic that it was actually done finally.
So on the It Works shot, that's actually the effluent going in right now? And that screen is rotating as it goes through?
It's a continuous belt screen. Gotcha. And it comes up, it actually has stainless steel hooks in it that hook larger items up to bring those up as well. And then compacts it all into a very, very compressed cake. And that can actually just be discharged up to our transfer station, where we'll end up dumping it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting.
Looks like a major project, yes.
It was a big project, and staff was very helpful on getting it done, and along with the other departments that we needed to get everything done. So
It was a good team, it sounds like.
it was a great team effort, and we got it done, so we were happy, very happy about it.
Well, it really, seeing pictures of how you're spending the citizens' money, that is very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
So let's have more of those, Mr. Bartosh. That was great.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6, presentation. Whoops, that was it. Item number 7, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 16th, 2012. Do I hear a motion?
I move we approve the minutes.
Second?
Councilmember Norman made the motion. The vice mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Comments regarding items listed on the agenda are limited to a 5-minute time period per speaker. Item number 8, unfinished business. Ordinance number 590, amending the municipal code by deleting chapter 10-2040, restricted parking areas reserved for the physically disabled, of Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, and adding a new chapter 2010-40, restricted parking areas reserved for the physically disabled, second and final reading. Commander.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, again, this is simply an amendment to Title 10, where we're clarifying the prohibition against parking in the areas designated next to the parking areas for the physically handicapped.
And we discussed this at least once, if not twice. And prior meetings, work sessions and regular meetings, and so it's been discussed and rediscussed several times. Are there any questions from members of the council? And are there any comments from the public? Mr. Pratt?
I move to approve ordinance 590.
Second.
Mr. Pratt made the motion, Mr. Dowling seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. City Clerk, please read title ordinance number 590 by title only.
Ordinance number 590, an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, amending the municipal code by deleting Chapter 10.20.40, restricted parking areas reserved for the physically disabled, of Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, and adding a new Chapter 10.20.40, restricted parking areas reserved for the physically disabled. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I so much, if you would thank the Deputy Clerk again for arranging these where you just have to push the button and you go to your item. That is so nice. Thank you. Okay, item number 9, new business. The following items are for council discussion, consideration, and possible legal action. Item number 1, discussion, consideration, and possible legal action to implement the city's fiscal year 2013 compensation study. And I'd like to introduce this item to the council. The City Council and City Management have identified employee compensation as an area of concern for the city. And I will say that I was just looking through my records today, and we did our goal setting and our strategic initiatives, and I have a copy of our 2008 strategic initiative where this was our goal then, and we've postponed that now for 4 years. So it's something that the council has talked about for some years. Inasmuch as a comprehensive review of the city's classification and compensation structure has not been conducted since 1999. So the last time we did a compensation study was many, many years ago. I think I can remember the discussion about it in the paper. You would have been on the council in 1999. I think I can remember Joan Cerny commenting about it. I remember reading about that a long time ago. Accordingly, trying to meet our goal, the City Council recently engaged the outside firm Public Sector and their personnel consultants, and they conducted a comprehensive salary survey of all positions in the city service, and they developed recommendations for bringing the city's compensation structure up to date and in line with the market for those positions. So throughout that study, we have found that some of our employees are way off the mark as far as what they should be earning. This is a very detailed study, and Kay is here with us from the Public Sector Personnel Consultants. She will be able to explain it. We did have a work session on this previously, so the council has heard some of this information from Kay already. So the survey is completed, and along with specific recommendations for its implementation. This is something that the City Council budgeted for in its last budget. We budgeted $600,000 for this item, so it's already in the budget. It's something that we looked ahead and placed in our budget. And the total amount is going to come up less than that. So we're still in the black on this. So if Kay from Public Sector Personnel Consultants would come up and share the information with the council and the public.
And Madam Mayor, if you'll
Yes.
indulge me before she does that,
Yes,
I need
Mr. Horton.
to declare a conflict of interest, and I filed a disclosure of conflict with the city clerk, and I need to step down and refrain from participating in this, but we have arranged for a very capable attorney to come up and advise the council if it needs any advice during its consideration of this item. And Don
remind
Peters
me,
is in the audience.
his name is?
Don Peters.
Don Peters,
We're going
okay.
to trade seats now.
Okay, Mr. Peters.
And I guess I'm stepping down as well, Mayor.
Yes.
In fact, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to talk about the unique legal issues this raises before you proceed.
Okay, you can, would you like to come up and sit down and then attach yourself to a microphone, please?
Sorry.
Or if you prefer, you can talk at the lectern, but it's up to you. So this is Don Peters, an attorney.
Yes, this is an unusual issue. The reason these individuals have conflicts is because they stand to benefit potentially from this proposal if it's enacted. In my view, all the employees of the city who may benefit from this have the same conflict of interest. That means they're prohibited by state law from participating in any way, and the Attorney General has expressed the view that that means exactly what it says, in any way. You're all in the habit of asking your staff questions about things, and that's to be expected. But in this situation, if you ask them questions, you may be inadvertently inviting them to break the law. So the staff really needs to stay out of it altogether. And unless you have questions, that's probably the last thing I'll say. But I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that before we went further.
So I have a question. Does that go for our city clerk?
It goes for any employee who stands to benefit from the proposal. I don't know all the positions that are in the proposal, so I can't answer that.
Every position in the city is listed on this proposal.
But would she be able to still take minutes?
Oh, she can take minutes.
Okay.
It's really more a matter of speaking, doing anything like that.
You said in any way, so, taking minutes seems to be a way to me.
It's a very good question, and you're right, I wasn't clear about that.
Thank you.
She's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Howdegi, for bringing that up. It was a good question.
Okay, well, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm here to present our study process, methodology, and findings. So that if anyone else has questions.
And Kay, would you remind me of your last name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tilzer.
Thank you.
Okay, so our company, Public Sector Personnel Consultants, was selected by the city to conduct the study, and so the components or the project scope of the study was to look at and evaluate the existing classification structure, the titles that were in use by the city, to verify that there was equitable placement of all the titles within that structure, making any recommendations in terms of how the classifications might have changed, any titles that might need to be modified, and then to survey the competitive marketplace for all of those existing job classifications to find out where the city stands in the marketplace. The goal or the scope was to develop a salary plan that is internally equitable and externally competitive. So the project goals were to, again, develop that hierarchy or to confirm that the current hierarchy of classifications and titles was appropriate for the jobs that were being performed at the city, to develop or modify or authenticate the current salary administration policy and plan to make sure that it was working and attracting and retaining employees to the city. Again, pricing the jobs to make sure that they are competitive so that they're internally equitable and externally competitive. And then to develop or modify the salary administration policy so that it does continue to meet the city's needs in terms of recruiting and retaining employees, and keep it simple so that everybody understands how the policy works, why it's in place, and how it's to be administered. So the first steps was we wanted to get to know the city's organization. While the process that we use is very similar for all of our clients, every organization is different. So we need to get to know the organization through organizational structure, review of policies and procedures of the budget, org charts, and updated job descriptions. So we utilized updated job descriptions to become familiar with the actual jobs being performed. We reviewed those to determine if there was any changes that were necessary, maybe old titles that weren't being used, duplications of titles where we could streamline those so that we don't have so many titles, and to make sure that the structure really does identify the distinct levels and occupations that exist at the city so that we can build a sound salary administration policy on top of that. So we looked through all of those, put together what we felt was the classification structure or the schematic of occupational titles titles, and then met with the human resources manager, who then met with the department heads to discuss and make sure that what we saw in our preliminary recommendations were on target. That was an opportunity to identify if there was errors or questions so we could go back through and make sure that we didn't miss anything. So for the, once that piece of the process, looking at the job descriptions, identifying the unique classifications that exist and the levels within there, we found that of the approximate 108 job titles that were currently in use, there was really truly 98 job classes that were distinct and unique. I have a table in there, Table 2, which outlines a summary snapshot of those job classes. Now, this is a partial list only. In the final report, there is the exhaustive list of all of the titles that we identified, and their Fair Labor Standing, FLSA means Fair Labor Standards Act, so that would be whether those titles would be eligible, and I'll speak to that in a minute, but eligible for overtime or not eligible for overtime based upon the job description duties listed. So you can see this is, again, partial. They are grouped according to the occupational job family, so while they at first glance look like departments, they truly are based upon their career ladder. So it's like a career ladder, all the jobs that are similar and the levels within each of those. So it's grouped by family. The FLSA designation, what we did is we evaluated each of the job descriptions to verify whether they were exempt, meaning that you do not have to pay overtime for those job classes, or if they were non-exempt. Now, the way the Fair Labor Standards Act is written, it's very narrowly interpreted for the exempt status. So if we want to identify or look at any job and identify that it is exempt from the overtime requirements, we need to be very clear that that job truly does meet that exempt criteria, and any gray areas need to be assumed to be non-exempt. So you'll notice that on the table 1 that we did highlight a couple of job classes that have a double asterisk. Those are based upon the job description. We are not clear and comfortable that they would qualify as exempt. So those need to be studied a little bit more detail on that. Now, one of the things that we're cautioned with the Fair Labor Standards Act, that it needs to be looked at the position level. So in order to accurately identify each of the job classes, we would need to analyze each employee's job duties. So the information that we've provided on Table 1 is very conservative. If there was any doubt at all, we've identified that job class as being non-exempt, and for any of those where there's a question, we would like to look at an in-depth position analysis questionnaire to make sure that we're not providing information that could provide some overtime issues in the future for the city. So we want to be very conservative on that. The exempt, non-exempt status does need to be identified at the position level. Since all we had was job descriptions, again, this is strictly a guide. Okay, Table 2, this is a summary of all the existing job classes. Again, it's a partial list because I didn't want to put all of them on the screen. You wouldn't be able to read it. But this is an illustrative list of the job titles that we looked at. I picked this one because this is where the majority of modifications existed. There was a lot of administrative titles in use, and based upon the job description, they were doing such comparable types of work and complexity of work that we recommended combining them, that we don't have so many titles that you have to manage. But we have the current job class on the far left side, our recommended job title on the middle column there, and on the far right side, the transaction code. At the top is the legend for those codes. Most of the jobs would have been a title modification, or they might have been moved into there was a couple that we recommended merging and deleting, so we're collapsing some of those administrative so that there's really only a couple of levels and not necessarily 4 or 5 different job descriptions for the administrative coordinator, but specific to the department. So we'll make them a little more general, it'll be a little easier to manage. And then again, most of the job titles actually were either no change or just strictly a modification. So the classification process was actually pretty streamlined. Not a lot of issues identified. So again, we had 10 jobs that were merged into other classes and deleted. So they were all similar job classes, but they had been carved out as separate titles. We did create 2 new job classifications because there were a couple occupations that really weren't well represented in the job description, so we gave them their own title. And then the rest of them would be either a no change to the title or a title modification. So the class itself was not an issue. It was just strictly making a more appropriate descriptive title. So now that we've gotten to know what the city's job classes were and identified the various levels and the occupational families, we wanted to start talking about who are we going to compare these jobs to out in the marketplace. So the basis for the salary survey market model identification would be who does the city compete with to attract employees or candidates for positions that are open here at the city, and who are those employers in the area that are pulling or attracting employees away. So we want to look at both. Who do you compete with to recruit employees? Who are you potentially losing employees to as competitor employers? So that was the fundamental basis for selecting comparators. There's a couple other factors that we wanted to make sure we included in developing a market model, and that would be that some of the jobs that exist at the city are size sensitive, meaning that at the very top levels, the managers, the general managers, the executive directors, the top level jobs, senior management jobs, are going to be size sensitive. So we're going to look at large cities such as the Phoenixes. Those city manager, public works directors, those types of jobs are going to be much broader, more complex jobs than a smaller city. So those were identified as size sensitive. So for purposes of developing this market model, we wanted to focus on cities that were similar size. And we selected the under 70,000 because the way Arizona is distributed, you've got big cities and then you got a lot of smaller ones. So we used 70,000 as the cutoff to say that any city larger than 70,000 we would not consider to be a comparator for the larger job classes, the executive senior management. Then there's a group of jobs that exist that are only found at municipal employers. So they're city jobs, they're public works or utilities, they're police and fire. So there's a municipal specific job. So we want to make sure that we were looking at all of your neighbors because that's where you're competing for those. Then there's a group of jobs that are non-municipal specific. Those are the jobs that are accounting professions, IT professions, skilled trades that exist outside of municipal or government employers. So we wanted to make sure we didn't ignore those. So we included the private sector data. Now, because private sector employers are difficult to just ask them for their pay information and their benefits information, we have to use published survey data. So we selected reliable published survey in order to account for the private sector occupations that are out there. Now again, what we are comparing in this market study is occupations. So we're not comparing the employers, we're comparing the jobs, because it's the job that we're trying to recruit and retain. So again, I already talked through this slide. These are the executive senior management positions. We tried to select cities that were under 70,000 in population statewide, because presumably at your director manager level, you're not going to just recruit somebody who's nearby with a short driving distance. You might potentially recruit somebody from far away, and they may move here to take those jobs. So we're looking at a larger area. We cast our net to recruit those jobs. Local government specific occupations, we focused mostly on all of your neighboring cities because that's really where we're trying to attract the occupations for a lot of the frontline workers. They're not going to move from the Tucson area to come here. They might, but more likely you're going to be recruiting those from within a local driving distance or commuting distance. And then again, Economic Research Institute is the published survey data that we found to be most valid and credible, and we use that for the Flagstaff metropolitan area. So that encompasses all of the Verde Valley, but it gives us the private sector wages for that regional area. Okay, these are the comparator employers that we included in the survey. As you can see, we've got some of those that are statewide employers. Those we're focused on trying to identify for that executive, include those for the executive senior management, and then you obviously recognize some of your neighbors. We included the Arizona DPS. I understand that they are a heavy competitor for your police occupation, so we can't ignore them. They're right down the road from you, so we had to include them for the sworn police officer positions. And then we've got the fire districts. A lot of the cities don't have fire because they have fire districts. So we have fire districts included in there to make sure we capture those jobs. And then I think we had a water utility or two in there so we could make sure we're not ignoring your local utilities here so we could capture that competition. There's a couple jobs that have an asterisk up there. They were identified as a comparator through our methodology. We asked for salary information, but they didn't respond. So there was only a couple of them, and we had sufficient data that there wasn't an issue. Oh, yes, a couple other, we have big employers here, the school districts, so we wanted to make sure we didn't ignore the school districts. You got Cottonwood, Oak Creek Schools, I understand they're a very big employer in town, and then the Mingus Union High School. So those would also have some of those IT, accounting, HR, skilled labor jobs. Okay, so our methodology was to identify all of those employers and then ask those employers to provide us their entire salary plan. So we asked them to send us the whole kit and caboodle. So we used the information that we had gathered, knowledge we gathered going through the job descriptions to try and identify which of those jobs in each of the comparator salary plans were most comparable to the city of Cottonwood. Now we were comparing job content. So some of these titles may or may not look like title matches here at the city. What we focused on was identifying who's performing these duties, what is it called at that employer, and extracting that information. So using the salary plan, what we did is we compared a structure to structure. It's a structure to structure analysis through the midpoint. Midpoint is what is used in compensation philosophy to pay your competent journey level performers. So that's the middle of the structure. So we identified that and made comparisons by taking the midpoint of each salary range for the comparator job class and then averaging those and calling that the prevailing rate. So when we refer to the prevailing rate, that's the average midpoint of all the comparator employers for each job class. Okay, table 3 here is the external prevailing rates comparison. What we did is we went through and each of the jobs where we were able to find 5 or more data points, we called those a benchmark. Again, partial list, so it would fit on the screen without blinding us all. This is partial list, and we have them broken up in 3 groups. You can see there's some double lines in there. What that separates is at the very top of the page, those are the job classes that were farthest behind the market at the midpoint. Now, this is a salary range comparison at this point. We're not looking at employee salaries. This is strictly the city's salary plan compared to the salary plans of others. So the ones at the top are farthest behind the market. Our concern would be any jobs that fall more than 5% behind the prevailing rate. Jobs that are within 5% of the prevailing rate we consider to be competitive and not too concerned with. And then, of course, we've got some jobs that are ahead of the market by more than 5%. So that's a good place to be. However, it's an area of caution in that we don't want to continually provide additional increases to those jobs because it drives them farther ahead. So we want to be conscious of those jobs, but our real area of concern is those jobs that are behind the market by more than 5% at the midpoint. So here is this overall statistics for the survey. We had 108 job classes based on our recommendations and our review. So we had 108 job classes at the city. We tried to survey 97 of those. There were some job classes that were just so unique that there just wasn't data out there. You've got an arsenic treatment specialist, those duties are absorbed elsewhere, so there really wasn't a good comparison there. So we identified there was 97 we thought we could get some good data for. Of the 97, we actually had 74 that had 5 or more data points. So that was kind of what we were looking for, is using 5 or more data points in order to get this prevailing rate so we could have a good, strong representation of the market. 7 of them were not city job classes. One of the things we identified at the city is there's some blended jobs out there. There's some dual hat type roles. So in order to try and test the market, there's not a comparable match for those jobs. So what we tried to do is we call it vanilla flavored. We tried to get a benchmark for each hat. So just a vanilla flavored. So if you have a blended job of, off the top of my head, let me think what we got here. Airport / community development. We're not going to find necessarily every market has that type of a job. So if we look at an airport versus a community development, it gives us an idea of where the market should be for those jobs. So we gathered some data on those, and then of course we had 16 jobs that had less than 5 data points. So they're included for information only in the study, but we're not using them to identify salary ranges. So again, here's the summary of all the job classes that we surveyed. You can see that we've got 50 benchmark job classes that were behind by more than 5%. So of the job classes that we surveyed, 67%, or about 2/3, were behind the market. By the way, that's a very typical type of scenario we see. Most of the surveys we do, we see about a 2/3 behind, 1/3 at and ahead, so that's not too alarming. That's partly due to COLA and across-the-board increases does tend to shift jobs that way. Market moves differently, and if you throw COLAs at jobs, then it's assuming that everybody's moving at the same rate, and they don't. Okay, so now that we've gotten an idea of what the market is for each of the job classes, then we wanted to look at what's the salary range structure that we need to have in place. So in talking with the city management team, we had determined that some of the issues that the city had been having was trying to move employees through the range and having a wide enough range to acknowledge all the various years of service and merit and performance and so on. So what we are recommending is that the city utilize a salary structure similar to what they've had in the past, but it's 75% wide. So we've identified a 75% wide range that gives lots of room for those varying complexity jobs. So once an employee comes into the range, there's plenty of opportunity for them to continue to move without hitting a max. And there's 5% between each range at the midpoint. So what that did was effectively get rid of some of the salary ranges. I think that the city had 90 or so salary ranges, and a lot of those aren't being used. So we put 5% separation between them, and now the structure is 50 ranges that are 5% apart at the midpoint, 75% wide. And they're acknowledged. We've divided them into quartiles for practical and implementation purposes to identify, where employees should be based on certain performance and longevity. So that's what the quartiles are there. So once we've identified the structure in the market, the salary plan development began by trying to align the salary range placement for each job class to a range in the city's new recommended structure that most closely matched the midpoint in the marketplace. So we tried to take the midpoints of the two and line them up, the market midpoint and this new salary range, and find the salary range whose midpoint closely matched the city's job class. So we began by doing that for each of the benchmark job classes. And then we evaluated, once we had aligned with the market, we evaluated the internal equity to make sure that just because the market says that your receptionist should be the highest paid employee in the city does not necessarily mean that for internal equity reasons that makes sense. So we want to make sure that based upon the job descriptions, the minimum requirements, the education, the amount of experience, the complexity and responsibilities, that there is appropriate separation and that there is a hierarchy, that your lower complexity jobs are paid lower than your higher complexity jobs. So we wanted to balance that. So we used the market as the guide and then made adjustments to make sure that there wasn't any upset in the internal alignment or the internal equity. And again, once we had made those recommendations, we visited with the management team to make sure that we didn't miss anything, to make sure there weren't any things that needed to be looked at again to make sure that we've got the correct alignment for these job classes. So once we had done that, the first step in the process is to look for this new structure, these new salary ranges, and to try and identify, do we have any employees who fall below the minimum of the market? And then once we identify any employees who fall below the new minimum of the salary range, we want to look at if they fall below, their salaries are below the minimum of the salary range. Then once we've identified that, because a couple of employees would get a salary increase to minimum, if they're a multiple incumbent job class, then there might be other employees whose salary was above the minimum. Maybe they've had a lot more years of service, but they didn't get an increase. So we've got this compression issue. We've got an employee who's been here 10 years, he didn't get a bumped increase, and we got a new employee who was below the minimum, they got a bump to increase. So we need to talk about in-range adjustments. So that is basically to make sure that in each job class, based upon merit and longevity, that the employees have an appropriate amount of separation based upon those factors. So this was one of the structures that we used to try and identify in-range placement. So we used it to create separation between employees in the same job class. It was based upon years in the position, and it is a one-time only adjustment. So anytime you come in and do a market adjustment, you need to be sensitive to the fact that there are some employees who will get an increase and then some that aren't, and so we have to make sure we create this separation so there's meaningful separation between those. Any employees who were at the target quartile did not get an adjustment. So if they were already there, if they were well into that range, they didn't get an adjustment. So we're only looking at employees who met this criteria who weren't at our target quartile. And then the other factor that we've looked at and have included a recommendation in our report is longevity placement. The city highly values employees who've been with the city for a long time. Didn't want to ignore the fact that within each job class in the market, there's still an opportunity for somebody who has been with the city a long time, and want to make sure that they're also being acknowledged and recognized. So this is one of the structures that we have provided as a sample to be used to recognize long employment with the city. can be modified to include merit. I understand that the city wants to make sure that merit is not ignored in that. So this one is strictly based on years of service, but it can be modified based on merit. And it's intended to give a percentage of the salary range midpoint to employees who meet the criteria established for longevity. So at this point here, any employee who met the years of service with the city would get a percentage of midpoint, not a percentage of their current salary. Okay, looking at all of those recommended implementation strategies, this would be the estimated fiscal impact of this plan. If the city were to choose to adopt the salary ranges that we've recommended and follow through with each of the implementation steps that we have carved out here, we're looking at 4 employees who would fall below the new recommended minimum of their job class. And we're looking at as a percentage of payroll, it's 0.25%, so very small. The bigger area of concern, which is why we have carved out those other areas of end-range adjustment, is that you have a lot of employees. Of your 184 employees at the city, 146 of them are below the midpoint. So that's where we wanted to create some in-range adjustments to try and move those employees based upon longevity, merit, combination of both. So those in-range adjustments are intended to try and create separation with those groups of employees. If you implement all of those, when we last spoke, the question was, as a percentage of payroll, what is the total? If you haven't already calculated that number, I threw that in the slide. So we've got some in-range adjustments to minimum, we've got some in-range adjustments, and if you choose to utilize the longevity placement as outlined in the report, the total cost as a percentage of payroll would be 5.14% of payroll, and that is base salary. Okay, so summary of our recommendations would be that the city adopt a permanent prevailing rate related policy, that the city establish its level of competitiveness at 100% of the market, and that would be plus or minus 5% would be considered at competitive with the market. We've developed the salary range recommendations included in the report as table 4 and 5, so utilize those. Annually update the plan. I know you mentioned that it's been a number of years. A lot of the clients that we've been working with recently have same scenario, but we, self-serving or not, we do provide you with the tools so that you can do this yourself, so you don't need to have us come back, but we do recommend that you update your salary plan every year, at least every other year. So again, we'll leave the tools for you, so you don't necessarily have to hire us back. So do that every year. Bring any employees who are below the minimum of the salary range up to that salary range. This is the prevailing rate policy that we recommend. It's sample language for you. And it basically just states that if the city has the financial resources available to it, that they provide salary increases that are competitive to the marketplace at 100%. So that does give you the flexibility to maintain some market competitiveness when you can afford to do so, but it gives you the flexibility that if there's not finances available, that you can certainly not be locked into that. Okay. I think that's the last slide. So.
Yeah.
That was the last slide. Perfect timing. Any questions?
Okay, your slideshow's done, so can we?
Yeah, it's done.
Can we catch the lights, please? Thank you.
Yeah, that just happened to be the end of the slideshow.
Mr. Howdigi, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I do have a question for the council. As we all know, we have 4 contract employees in our city system, which would be the city manager, attorney, city clerk, and the magistrate. And every year we meet with them to analyze their performance and such, and then negotiate their salaries. Okay, these people get to, 4 positions get to negotiate their salaries. So my question would be, is it appropriate for us to be considering any raises at this time for these 4 contract employees, given the fact that we meet with them once a year, and part of that, shall we say, position, they do get to negotiate their salaries? So that's my question.
Okay. Thank you. So, council, do you have any comments?
I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
Certainly something we have to consider and talk about, I would think.
I guess
I see this point.
I'm kind of thinking that all of the employees, including our employees, get a review. They're supposed to get one every year. And what we're actually considering here is a market issue. So if our employees are below market, it doesn't seem like it would really be fair to exclude them from this process. And I'm thinking, I appreciate, your thoughts on that, and it is a good question, but I'm thinking that possibly it might be unfair not to include all of the employees in this process.
Well, we're not excluding them. We've got information here that sets minimums at, beginning, midpoint, and so on and so forth. So we're not overlooking that as far as this work that was done here. That's information we can take with us into the negotiations with these 4 contracted employees.
Vice Mayor, did you have a
They're in a little different position than our other
Right.
rank and file employees.
Right.
And the way I hear it, though, we are considering the position salary, not the employee salary. So we're bringing the positions up to where they should be. And I appreciate Mr. Howdige's comments, too. So I'm a little confused on that. Are we not doing the positions, bringing the positions up to where they should be, or?
Well, there's 2 parts of the study. The initial part of the study where I showed table 3, identifying behind the market, that was at the occupational level, so that would be based upon the range. Once we identify ranges, make recommendations for new ranges, then we would look to the employees at that point to compare their salary to this new range and make adjustments based upon where they fit into that range. So it's both.
It's both, okay.
And once again, the position is a contract position.
Any other questions by the council or comments on that?
Yeah, I guess I would just... You've done this before. How have other places dealt with contract employees versus regular employees? Do you have any background in that?
Typically, yes, because all of our clients have contract employees. So typically, if they include them in the study, then that's just strictly background materials, much like a union bargaining negotiation process where you have market data and it just helps you to determine if the request is reasonable. So it's used to help in the negotiation process typically. We also have clients that do have their contract employees slotted into a salary range. So it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of some of our clients do identify a salary range and some of them don't have a salary range identified. It's just strictly negotiated. But they do use market data in any event in order to help them to know if the request or the negotiation is in the ballpark.
Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I could be missing this. I have trouble with numbers sometimes. But I'm trying to find where I can see what would happen to certain positions if we did approve these recommendations, where that salary would go, where the salary would change, what it would increase by for the jobs that would increase. And I'm not sure I see a chart that shows me that, or I'm missing it.
No, actually, it's not included in there. The benchmark jobs would show you a comparison, but for the jobs that are linked, those would not appear on that chart. It's something that I do have, but it's not displayed in the print range, so to speak. But if that's something that you're interested in, we could certainly provide that to show each job class, the new recommended range, where they are currently, and because we do usually run that column, but for the report, we just show the recommended mid, and max. So,
Right.
but yeah, that is...
That would help me a little bit.
Okay, sure.
For instance, if you said the police chief was moving up and show where current salary is and what the new salary would be.
Yes, I can provide that.
Are there any comments from the public? Get that.
So do we have an answer on the contract? We kind of switched gears here.
We will answer it, but I just want to see if there's any comments from the public too. We'll answer it before any vote.
And
Mr. Pratt.
if we do get that study that shows the current salary and where the new salary would be, we could look at the contract employees then too. But I understand both sides of the issues, that we have contract employees, but also we are just looking at jobs. What's that?
I don't think it impacts that. I'm not asking for a change there. I'm asking for clarification whether we should, with these contract employees who are already in a different category as far as I'm concerned,
Right.
okay, who get to negotiate their salaries, should be considered here and now. Are we going to consider them here and now and then come review, expect to bump up the salaries again, have another request?
Right.
This is what I'm trying to clarify.
Okay. Yeah, I see your point, but I also see the other side of it is where we are just looking at the jobs and saying, even though they're contract employees, say this magistrate's job typically is in this range in a community of our like size, and it should be in that range in our community.
And I mean, like the city clerk.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, use the city clerk as an example.
I think,
Right.
to sum it up, part of this is adopting this as a guide for salaries. Then the other portion with those 4 specific employees is that we, as a unit, then set their salaries. So there is sort of a differential there,
But we
where
don't
we have a
have-
guide to follow and reference.
But we don't have any guidelines to navigate that right now. And maybe that's what we should be thinking about. At least discussing at some point to clarify this.
Vice Mayor?
And if this is a one-time thing, then when they do negotiate with us, that doesn't necessarily mean they get an increase down the road.
If
I
they are
understand
at
that.
what their market calls
It
for.
doesn't necessarily mean that they do get an increase.
Well, I'm
Just do a
I'm just-
review and consider
yeah.
Do a
this their
review, right.
increase.
I'm kind of thinking that it might be unfair to not include them if they're below market, which even the city clerk, from what I read, is. And we're approving all the other employees. It wouldn't be fair not to have the city clerk be considered in the same manner, to be put up to where her position should be based on all of this data, the scientific data that we have, or the city attorney.
Which that data is useful when you're sitting down to negotiate with your contract employee. I don't think it's apples and apples here. It's apples and oranges. We have 4 people in what I feel is an entirely different category by the sheer fact that they're on contract. And we can't escape that. They're on contract. How to handle this now or during their review. If we are supposed to review these people before considering any raises, then maybe we should exclude them at this point and reserve this discussion for when we are reviewing it.
Council?
Again, I still understand Councilman Yadigi's point, but I also see the other side is where we're just looking at jobs, setting ranges, and if we approved putting those jobs in that range, again, which is comparable to other communities of our size, so we're even with those communities, then when it comes time to negotiate, we could consider within that range.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not at this time. It would be
Yeah.
not with.
Right.
You said exactly what I've been saying now.
Okay.
Okay. We're not that far off for once.
Good.
I think it deserves some discussion and we get some guidelines on this. I mean, that's the least I think we can do on this to clarify this issue.
And I would be concerned that they weren't raised to the market rate. If they're below market,
Right, that was
that
my...
you're going to make them wait for a year to be paid what our study said
And
that
it's
they should be
retroactive,
paid.
just like the rest of the employees. It's retroactive.
That was my point. I want those particular jobs to be within the market rate.
And that's fine. And we're not arguing that point.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, moment of silence.
So council,
Well, I think that whatever happens, we are the ones that have the decision power on that 4.
It's
So
right here.
regardless.
It's
So
with
now
the
or later.
council here. That's very true, Mr. Dowling.
it is up to the council.
Yeah.
Our staff is sitting out in the audience, except for
And
the
once
minute
again,
taker. It's our decision.
And now you and I agree on something, so make sure to write that down.
It's our decision based upon the data that we've collected here from the study. So I guess the issue is, Councilmember Howdiggy suggests that we don't treat all of our employees, I guess, equally, because he feels that contract employees should have a review before bringing them up to market of what they should be paid. We've given them review after review after review for the past several years, and they have all passed our reviews. And so it's not like we don't know what their workability is or support their workability, but, you know.
Then there wouldn't be any reason to review with them after you review once or twice and say that's good enough. And automatically we're gonna just raise the salary.
To treat them fairly and equally as the rest of the employees.
Well,
they are our employees.
Mr. Rodriguez, on an issue that we had a while back, that I was talking about fairness with our employees concerning the compensation to the public safety versus the rest of the rank and file. You know, flat told me that,
there's no fairness in being an employee, right?
Well, basically that's what he said, you know. So we've already established that.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a procedure that we follow with our contract employees. If we don't have that procedure in place, okay, if we're not going to review them yearly.
But we will, even
position,
if they're included in this study, we will be reviewing them, as when we always do.
And at that time, because of their contract status, then whatever raises can be considered at that time.
Right.
Vice Mayor.
But from the...
At the same time, for the last 4 years, although they've been getting raises, and some people might think they were more than what they should or less than what they should, they're still not, for the last 4 years, like the other employees, been brought up to the market standards.
And we're discussing the market standard. This decision is based on the market.
Exactly.
The employees that we hire, the council hires, in some cases, are not receiving the market pay that this study brought to our attention.
That's why we did the study.
That's why we did the study. So I understand Councilmember Howdiggy's issues, but I don't think that I agree. I think that we do the interviews, just like all the other employees who will get raises if the council chooses to pass this study. They will get their raises and they will get their annual reviews the same as our employees would do. Our employees should not be held back from getting the market rate for their jobs if the because we're going to review them just like the other employees get a review. I don't know, that's just what makes sense to me. But
They won't be reviewed until, the other employees won't be reviewed until their review comes up.
Until their annual review.
And they don't necessarily have to have another increase either. That doesn't mean we have to give an increase at review, just like their supervisors don't have to give an increase. It all depends on performance.
And, you know, for me, when we do begin to review those contract employees, I would like them to be already at the market rate. So that's, again, I see both sides of it, but I really want them to start at the market rate. And some of those people are below it now. And then we can review them and say, well, no.
Okay, and also remember that when they negotiated the contract, they settled for that rate.
Right.
So
right.
this puts a little different spin on that.
Well, but now we've done a compensation study, and it's all of a sudden, yeah, you know, some of these jobs are underpaid. We're paying less than the market rate for our competitors and comparable size communities.
And it goes for the same with, I mean, we just hired Tom Whitmer, and he accepted the pay that he was offered, and he came to work for us, the same as our employees do. There are employees that aren't hired by us that are in the same boat. They've accepted the salary that the city manager offered them, and they came here and they might be under market. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't quite understand, how you're analyzing.
I understand that you don't.
Right.
Believe me. Let's go ahead and move on.
So, okay, any more discussion by the city council? So do I hear a motion? Let's hang on, let me get over here. Just a second, let me get back to the compensation study. So I would make a motion to approve the compensation study, and help me, Mr. Attorney, if I don't have all the pieces in here, to be retroactive for all employees back to July 1st, and using the compensation study for the basis of making our employees whole based on the study. Did I miss anything, Council?
Maybe coming back with the what Terrence had requested.
And Terrence, what was your request? How can I add to my
I wanted
motion?
to see the actual figures of where the people are now and what the new salary would be.
Okay.
If we-
And we got that at the work session.
Yeah, I didn't think so. See, I looked through to try to see that, and and again, it could be my problem with numbers, but I couldn't really find it.
Well, they handed it out.
Yeah, I looked at that. I didn't see where the current salary was and where the projected salary would be. We got midpoint and minimum, but we didn't actually see numbers where they would go from what.
Madam Mayor, may I just...
Yes.
I think if you don't have the numbers included, the motion may not establish anything clear in terms of what the council did. That's the concern. You may approve this conceptually, but if your intent is actually to change the compensation, I'm afraid you won't really have a record of what you did without those numbers, if you understand what I'm saying.
Can I see that?
Let me take all my sticky notes off of it.
And check out page 3 of 62, it'll give you one of them. And
Maybe the lady
2 of
from the
62
company
will
that
give you
did this
the
can
other.
help him out. Would you please? It'd be a lot easier for you
Oh,
to point
okay,
that
it
out.
does. Okay, it does put current salary, new salary. Okay. I miss it.
And that is a public record. I'm sure it's probably available on the website already from our work session
I believe it should be. I think it was.
for the public. If it was in our packet, it should be on the website.
Right.
And if it's not on the website already, we'll put it on the website for this meeting.
Yeah, we do have the numbers. They weren't part of the agenda for this meeting, but they're part of an agenda for a work session.
Yeah.
Okay. This to be determined on the motion is just throwing me for a curve.
Pardon?
This to be determined on the motion isn't.
So I'm going to withdraw my motion and start over
Okay.
based on information that Terrence has now.
Did you want this back right away?
Here, Diane, you can look at mine.
No,
sorry.
I don't want it back. I already read it. I already know what's in it.
No, I read it, but I forgot.
I would agree that we need to.
I'm waiting for Terrence to get through that.
Yep, I've gotten through it pretty well.
This here.
I see where the razor started.
And that's all in the study, correct? The document that was printed out for us.
Contract people.
So we'll want to make the motion based on that study. Is that the study of the...
Increases that.
It's got the positions in it. I mean, it doesn't have people's names. It has positions.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if I found it interesting, but I was astounded that some of these salaries would go up by, well, there's one that would go up by over $20,000 a year. I was like, wow.
We've gotten a very good deal having that employee for many years. There's a couple of employees that were that underpaid
Is that much
Yeah.
increase?
coming out of the study.
So they were pretty close anyway.
Okay, I'm all set.
You're set?
If you want to make a motion, you can. Don't wait for me.
Okay, help me do this right so that it's legal. So So I would like to make a motion to approve the compensation study and to provide the market raises for our employees to get them to what the level they should be, based on all this documentation that we have, retroactive for all employees, equally fair to July 1st, as provided in the budget of the city. Have I missed anything?
I think you basically got it. Do you want to refer to that document and accept those amounts?
Yes, we would like to refer to the study, to the compensation study and its recommendations.
Okay. I think that's sufficient, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
And you said all employees, including contract?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the mayor made the motion, the vice mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm opposed because I didn't get an answer to my question. Still up in the air. So I can't support this at this time.
You said move on. So we move on.
I do feel
You
that I
moved on.
did.
That's okay.
I do
Then
feel
we're
that I
good.
did
We're good.
answer it to the best of
good.
my ability.
Good.
Okay, so I guess it's not a resolution, so we do move on. Item number 2, approval of the purchase of 2 standby power generators for well site 8, 9, and lift station number 1.
We have to reestablish our crack team of
We have Mr. Biggs with us to describe this item.
This is rather mundane after the last topic. Madam Mayor, Council, this evening I ask that Council consider the purchase of 2 emergency electrical generators. The requested units will provide backup electrical power to 2 critical sites within the city's water and wastewater infrastructure. A request for bids was advertised, which resulted in 3 bids being returned. The apparent low bidder, Cummins Rocky Mountain, submitted a bid of $80,978. That was including taxes, and that was for both units. Additional bids were received from AGM Sales and Service and Cobra Power Systems in the amount of $109,057.27 and $128,720 respectively. The bids and submitted generator specifications were checked and found to be in compliance with the city's procurement regulations. One of the 2 requested generators is a replacement for an existing but increasingly unreliable unit at the city's lift station number 1 on Cottonwood Street. The second generator is to provide a backup power source at the city's well site 8-9. This, coupled with the just completed 480,000-gallon reservoir, will allow the utility department to continue water service during extended power interruptions. Installation of these generators will result in a more consistent, reliable operation and improved customer service. This item was previously brought before council. However, after a thorough review of the bids and bid documents revealed some discrepancies, council was asked to reject both of the previously received bids. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It sounds very important and needed.
I think so.
Yeah. In case of emergency, right?
Exactly.
ICE. Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, and I know we did discuss this earlier, and we established that there was a need, but we had problems with the bids at the time. Looks good to me.
Problems resolved, we hope.
That's very important in case of power outages and everything else. So any comments from the public? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Dowling.
I move to approve the purchase of 2 standby emergency power generators for well site 8-9 and lift station number 1 from Cummins Rocky Mountain for the amount of $80,978.
Second.
You guys were simultaneous pick up. Okay. Councilmember Dowling made the motion. Councilmember Norman seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item is approval of a design contract with Shepard Winsner for the Community Development Block Grant 10th Street Reconstruction Project. Mr. Luter, I am so happy to have this item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. March 11th of 2011, Council authorized staff to pursue a CDBG grant for reconstruction of 10th Street from Mingus to Main. The city was subsequently notified the grant was approved, and we advertised a solicitation for statements of qualifications. Upon complete of that solicitation, the top-rated firm at that time was Shepard Westminster. Staff has been negotiating a contract and a scope of work. This is actually something the city attorney and I tried in combining the scope right into the contract. Saves us an extra document. And we're bringing that forward tonight, requesting council approval. The fees are a not-to-exceed fee, which means they have to be billed by the hours worked. There is no lump sum involved in this. And staff recommends award of this bid in the amount of $43,900 and with an additional potential for $500 in reimbursables to Shepard Westminster, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I looked at this pretty closely, and again, maybe I missed something. Would this also be able to include the realignment of 10th Street?
No, this will stop short of 10th Street. We've got some property acquisition issues there with the gas station, and one thing, if I may use the dreaded R word, probably the best solution to that intersection is a roundabout. And staff has looked at that. As a matter of fact, I know the city managers had some conversations with some landowners about the potential of donations of land to do the roundabout.
Because it is a traffic problem, the way it aligns with the other part of 10th Street that goes down to Riverfront Park. It causes some issues.
More of a nightmare.
At busy times.
But this would stop actually short of Main Street, and we're pursuing some other avenues for correction of that intersection.
Yeah. But certainly 10th Street needs to work.
And what I really liked was the fact that you will be laying some reclaimed water lines. And I think that's really looking forward thinking.
We found out purple pipe is the mayor's favorite color.
Yes, it is. It's like, let's get our city ready for reclaimed water use.
And just a little clarification on that for council. This wouldn't be part of the loop we've discussed. What this would be is a connection in between a future proposed loop that would go down Willard, supplied from the Mingus plant, and the potential for pumping water up from the Riverfront plant, so we could hopefully in the future move water back and forth between the two.
Great. Anytime we can move ahead with thinking about reclaimed water, it's good.
It's the only thing that grows along with growth.
Exactly. It's a future water supply. Then I noted that you talked about the stormwater pollution prevention plans. Those are all, is this like considered a federal project?
Yes, it's federally funded.
So we have to do all of the extra rules and
yes,
and all of
things the federal government makes us do,
which makes streets a lot more expensive.
It can.
Right. Any other questions from council members? I'm very excited about thinking about getting started on that street. It's quite a collector, really, and it needs attention. And the council's been working on this, it seems like, what, 3 or 4 years since we discussed this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Mr. Pratt?
I move to approve the design contract with Shepard Westminster for design of the 10th Street CDBG project and authorize the mayor to sign the contract.
Second.
Councilmember Pratt made the motion. Councilmember Norman seconded it. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to comment on this item? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of staff proceeding to issue a request for qualification, or RFQ as we know them, for architectural engineering services for the design of a new emergency communications center, followed by a construction manager at risk RFQ. And we have Mr. Mangipan.
Good evening. I'll try to make this quick. I don't think this will be too complicated. We are asking your direction to go ahead and issue the RFQ that's attached for the design portion of the Emergency Communications Center. And as you said, it'll be followed up after we've done that selection process with an RFQ for construction manager at risk. So this will be basically the same process we followed with the rec center.
With the rec center. Yep. And that worked well for us, it seemed like, the construction manager at risk.
Yep. I think the only thing that we could have done to improve on that, we would have had the construction manager at risk on a little bit earlier. And that way, doing it the way we're doing it here, that's the way it'll work. Again, this is just to issue the RFQs. There's no contract yet, no selection process yet. As you know, we've been working with outside consulting firm IXP to define the scope of what we're doing for that project. It is in the process of being redefined a little bit right now, since we've gone from a regional facility to just a City of Cottonwood facility. So it will be, right now the plan is it's located behind the public safety building on the empty piece of land we currently own there. We met last week, discussed it, and it's a great location for that. There's also its advantages of being next to the existing facility. But again, this is, for tonight, this is just direction to proceed with the RFQs. If anyone's got any specific questions.
That was a lot of reading.
I'm told I'm supposed to attach all the attachments.
It made our packet long, but it's okay. We want to do our job.
This is just my version of
your version.
Packet, yes. But again, that's what goes out in the RFQ. You'll have the instructions for the people that are submitting the statements of qualifications, and then we send out a sample contract so they know what they're getting into, what we're going to require of them as we go through the process. No surprises later down the line. It's worked out well for us in other processes. It does create a lot of paperwork, though.
Thank goodness we have you. Mr. Bartosh?
And just to update the council, our IXP should be providing us, I think next week, with a subscriber cost, and it'll be based on the cost per call for service. And we'll put that out to the other agencies in the Verde Valley at that time, and we'll give them a deadline and determine whether they're in or whether they're out.
Okay. So do you want to, for the public's benefit, just kind of in a few sentences share some information about this project and the need for it?
Well, I think first and foremost, we've been talking about this for the last several years because the communications center we currently have for our police department is completely inadequate. The environment was not designed for this amount of technology. The other thing that we've been trying to work on all along, and this has been going on for at least 7-8 years, is trying to develop a regional public safety communications center, because we feel that that really has the best benefit for our public in terms of integrating and making interoperable all our public safety services so that they can respond to a large incident in a better coordinated fashion. But again, I think it'll depend on whether or not other agencies can afford, want to be involved with this. But at very minimum, it'll involve our police department and our fire department will be dispatched out of the same facility. Most likely Clarkdale, and we'll see who else is involved.
Vice Mayor?
Seems to me like we've been talking about this for 10 to 15 years.
Probably. It's been a while.
At least.
Now,
Been a
public
long
safety
time.
building is 10 years old.
Yeah, and I've only been here 7, but yeah, it started at least a couple of years
With the
before I got
discussions
here.
around the Verde Valley in Sedona.
And we have both our chiefs here. Did you care to comment at all? You don't need to, but if you wish to, the floor is yours. Okay. And we've talked about this at many prior meetings, and they have expressed their need for their departments and their concern. And the vice mayors expressed the fact that they're all in this little kind of cubby hole
Take the tour, folks.
with sprinklers right over the tops of all this
Water
expensive equipment.
sprinklers on top of this, and then our equipment's getting out.
Our equipment's old. We don't have, I mean, the air is not good because there's no windows and no way to.
The equipment's in how many rooms now? 5 or 6, Chief? Yeah.
So it is just something that the council prior determined was a need, and we budgeted for it. So, yes, Mr.
The
Horton.
one important reason behind bringing this to the council to approve is the selection criteria, so that the council is aware of the criteria staff will use to evaluate and select the parties to negotiate with and then recommend for contract, both on the design side and for the CMAR. So it's important that council is comfortable with the way in which staff is going to evaluate and score the submissions.
Yeah, if you look in the RFQ, the procedures, it talks about how they're rated for different categories of qualifications, and it also talks about balancing between the submittal process and the interview process. So it's not an all or nothing on the interview process. You know, part of the weight that was given to their statement of qualifications counts also towards the final results. It's just, you know, it's just a way of doing the math to make it work and hopefully make it a little bit more equitable to everyone that submits.
Right. Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, look, as I read through it, it looked very complete to me, and I thought anyone who applies for this really wants this job because they have to answer an awful lot of questions. And they have to be very transparent, which protects the city to ensure that you get somebody who meets all these qualifications. So I thought it was pretty good. It's
Okay, so do I hear any comments from the public? And I'd entertain a motion, Mr. Dowling.
I will make one. I move to have staff proceed with issuing 2 requests for qualifications for the Emergency Communications Center project, one for architectural engineering and one for construction manager at risk firms.
Second.
I think you were like 1 second.
yeah, she was first.
Okay. Mr. Dowling made the motion. The vice mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next item is approval of a job order contracting bid for the construction of a new parking lot in Old Town located behind the Orion Bakery. Another project council's been working on and staff for many, it seems several years at least. So, Mr. Luter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This project has been in the works for quite some time. The original acquisition of the property, we've done some removal and rebuilding of a retaining wall. That particular work was under the threshold of bringing it back to council. The retaining wall came out very nice, very well engineered. This parking lot will add 37 spaces, parking in Old Town along with an entrance off of Main Street, a pedestrian walkway. Some of the work that is involved in the contract is a lot of demolition and saw cutting of the existing base prep and compaction. This parking lot will have a 6-inch aggregate base, which is a 3-inch asphaltic concrete surface over it. It involves quite a bit of curb and sidewalk. It will include the installation of the power conduits and also the lighting bases. The lights themselves are not part of this contract. We're still researching at council's request. They wanted us to look into solar lighting. and that looks like it's becoming possibly a better option. All the landscape and irrigation. This also includes the base, but also includes paving the alleyway from Canal up to the northern end of this parking lot, and the entrance off of Main Street. There's a pedestrian walkway that will allow the people to walk from the parking lot and come out on Main Street right next to the bookstore. Includes all the parking bumpers, signage, and pavement markings. We did a second ad alternate quote, which was for the paving of the alley between Pima and where it's currently paved behind the Tavern Grill and Hotel. That came in a little bit higher than we'd anticipated and would put the project over the council's budget. So staff recommends at this time we hold off on paving that portion of the alley from Pima going south towards the existing pavement.
And that could be something, I mean, if it is necessary, and if in the future staff determines it's necessary, we could just make that a part of our annual road program.
Correct.
If you...
Excuse me.
Certainly.
But that alleyway is going to be graded, right?
Correct. Well, the alleyway that comes off of Pinal and goes up to the parking lot will be paved. It's the parking, it's the alleyway south of Pinal going down towards Pima. That was the ad alternate. Yeah, it's actually, that alleyway will actually be paved and we'll have a valley gutter up the middle of it for drainage because the drainage up there is really not up to standards right now. So basically from Canal Street, up the alley, out through the area we have between the two buildings and the parking lot will all be paved, concrete sidewalks, curbs, and gutters.
Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I know when we originally talked about this, and there's many people in town who are going to say to me about time when this gets going, because few have questioned me about it. When we originally talked about this, we had decided that the alleyway would be one-way traffic for vehicles. There would be a pedestrian walkway in that alleyway that goes out to Main Street,
Correct.
and that it would be covered. Is that still part of the plan?
Yeah, it'll be a 7-foot walkway. Fire department standards are normally 20 feet on the access to accommodate the 7-foot pedestrian parkway with the bumpers to protect them from the vehicle traffic. We'll have an 18-foot entrance there.
Right, but it'll be one way. It'll be
yes, one way in, and then
coming in from Main.
Coming in from Main. We really didn't want anybody coming out towards Main because it's a blind alleyway coming out on the sidewalk. And,
exactly.
Unsafe. So
that part, though, the part that's the alleyway between the buildings will be paved.
Yeah, that'll be paved.
But just not the alleyway from, say,
comes up behind the building.
the street right here down to where the hotel is.
From Pinal going up to the parking lot, the alleyway will be paved. So from there up, what staff is recommending we hold off on paving is across the street from where the pavement ends behind the Tavern Grill down to Pima.
Right, that's what I was picturing when I read this.
That is not going to, we're recommending that not be paved.
Down to Pinal.
Right. That not be paved at this time because it would put the project over budget, although if council has the discretion to tell me to spend more money, but staff isn't recommending it at this time.
So that'd be the portion behind the tavern, basically, that section. Is that what you're talking? I was going to say, having been in an office that was in the other, the northern, portion north of Pinal, water goes down there pretty good, and if you didn't pave that, you're going to end up with rocks and dirt all over your new paving, and it's not going to be pretty. So
yeah, no, they did some pretty extensive drainage work, and that's what we decided is and I'm sorry, council may not be aware what a valley gutter is. It's basically a depressed curb. Instead of having a crown in the road, we have what's called a valley concrete gutter, and that will carry the water down the alley into the parking lot, and then the drainage, quite a bit of drainage work.
you have a lot of water off the roofs on those buildings too.
So is that something council wants to discuss as to whether you want to find the funds to do it all right at the same time, or do you want to just go ahead and...
I would go ahead with it as it is. I think it's important we pave the alleyway that feeds into Main, but the one that runs parallel to Main really doesn't get much traffic anyhow.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one, Jesse, you're saying
well,
that...
I think we've got two separate ones. I think we're talking about two separate... There's the portion between, is it Pinal?
Yeah.
From Pinal north to that parking lot is going to be paved and have a valley gutter in it. From Pinal south down to behind the tavern is not going to be paved.
Got it.
That's the separate piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the part that's behind where you used to work will be paved?
Yes, behind Orion Bread.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the other piece, the council or the staff and council and staff can consider in a different project if it's needed.
Staff also, at council's request, took a look at a second ad alternate, and that was for installation of a solar reflective coating in the parking lot. The cost we got on our JLC quotes range from $19,600 up to $28,100. And some of the investigation we did on the two major issues we had with the solar reflective coating at this time. The first is the parking lot has to not be sealed for 30 days to allow it to off-gas, which means we'd either have to have a brand new parking lot that was closed off, which probably wouldn't make many fans out there, or we'd have to come in after 30 days and power wash it. The second thing, and what really made our decision to recommend we don't do it at this time, is it has to be reapplied every 3 to 5 years at this cost. So it's a product that's up and coming. It's a product that maybe in 4 or 5 years will be cost effective, but right now the market is kind of tight on that, and it's a pretty big expense to consider spending $8,000 to $10,000 a year to put some solar reflective coating on it. So it's something we could look at in the future if council wanted to.
It's not really a big enough lot to make that much difference with solar reflective.
I mean, if you have to do it every 3 to 4 years, that just doesn't make good horse sense.
No. And it's more important to get that parking lot open. Anybody who's been down here on a Friday night recently realizes it's tough to find a place to park. And if, there will be lighting there too, right?
Yes. And that's this particular project has the power installation and the bases put in. What we're doing right now is we're looking at whether high efficiency LED lights or solar lights. The solar lights have come a long way in the last 6 months to a year. So we'll take a look at those, but city staff will probably procure and install those.
And I bet you that parking lot will be full right away.
I suggested parking meters, but it was vetoed.
I do have a question. Would this be a conflict for you, Ruben, this item? Not.
I don't know. I'm not benefiting. Am I?
So I didn't know if that.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Hadige, I'd need more facts about why it's a question.
I own a building that alleyways behind us.
There is some authority in the nature of Attorney General opinions that suggests that if we're talking about improving property adjacent to a public official's property, then it certainly wouldn't be inappropriate to declare a conflict.
Does that include the city man?
That would include any public official who has I think the metric would be if your property value would be increased or stands to be increased by the improvement you'd be authorizing.
So I should go sit with the boys over there.
That's your call.
Probably the safe thing to do.
Or should I just push my chair back?
Chair back.
Or should I turn in this conflict of interest disclosure memorandum? We need a legal.
Column A, column B. If you are, in all seriousness, if you're declaring a conflict on the record, that's all it takes.
Oh, this paper or?
You don't have to if the minutes can serve as the record.
I'll fill it out anyway, just to make sure we're above board.
Mr. Delling.
On that same note, I know somebody who owns property on that street, or I'm employed by a person who owns a piece of that. Is that, I don't, same thing?
Get over there with the boys.
You know, that's more attenuated. I think that's your decision to make.
I will just, as long as we have enough for a quorum, I'll go ahead and declare a conflict and have a seat.
Mr. Pratt,
you can
don't tell us you own something.
Can I make a motion before we lose any more council members?
Please.
Can I just say, because I think the city manager
Partosh?
mentioned me, I have property on Cactus, but it's not commercial property.
It's not connected to that parking
I have
lot.
no reason to use this parking lot.
Not even if you have an overflow company?
Other than to walk, yeah. I'll actually probably get
I move to award the bid for construction of a new city parking lot, driveway, and pedestrian walkway behind and adjacent to the Orion Bread Company building to Kinney Construction in the amount of $155,333.93.
Second.
Mr. Pratt made the motion, Councilmember Norman seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And the city clerk took the record that we had 2 conflicts, or noted in the record, not took the record. Okay. Item number 6 is resolution number 2673, designating the election date and purpose of election, designating the deadline for voter registration, and designating the place and the last date for candidates to file nomination papers. Ms. Jimenez.
Yes, Madam Mayor, council members. It's once again time for the city's regularly scheduled elections, which we fall in the odd years, which of course will change after this election. This will be our last election that we hold an election on an odd year. This resolution calls for the election date to be held in March for the primary and in May for the general. For this election period, we have 3 council member seats that are open, that are expiring and will be open for candidates to run for the seats. And those seats are of the Vice Mayor Piper, Council Member Norman, and Council Member Alinsky. Candidate packets will be available in my office starting on November 13th, and they're due back in my office by December 12th at 5 p.m. So any people out in the audience that may be interested in running for a council seat can come to my office, and I will help them go through the paperwork that's required and the requirements that are required to become a candidate.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, it's March 12th, the primary. Is that?
It is
March 13th.
March 13th?
March 13th.
March 13th is the primary, and anybody who wants to run needs to pick up paperwork at the city clerk's office starting November 13th and have it returned by December 12th at 5 p.m.
Yes.
Mr. Pratt.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it actually is, the primary is March 12th, according to this document here, the resolution.
Oh.
And
Was the year.
again, this seems like it's non-controversial, and
Okay.
it's a no-brainer.
So let's be sure the public knows the date of, it's March 12th, 2013 is the primary. So we can be sure everybody has that correct. Okay, so is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item? If not, Mr. Pratt, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 2673.
Second.
Mr. Pratt made the motion, the Vice Mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. City Clerk, please read resolution number 2673 by title only.
Resolution number 2673, a resolution of the Mayor and Council of the City of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, designating the election date and purpose of election, designating the deadline for voter registration, and designating the place and the last date for candidates to file nomination papers.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, request for additional funding from the Council's contingency fund for the expansion of the Old Town Holiday Light Program. Mr. Bartosh.
Madam Mayor, council members, this was a little bit of an oversight on my part. I brought this before the council during a work study session and asked for direction from the council regarding, one, expanding the light display and also obtaining another $5,000 from the council's contingency fund. And council had directed me to come back to the council during a regular session to get a formal approval on both of those issues. And so I am here to request that approval tonight. And I will also share with you that they are just about complete with the light display. And I talked to Grant Halfley, the owner of Yavapai Broadcasting, and he said that they're also into this display for quite a bit of money. And so it should be something spectacular. I also took the president of the Old Town Association in to see it. She was down doing an interview with me at Yavapai Broadcasting, and she was really impressed and was very interested in trying to encourage other property owners on the Old Town area to really try and get involved in this program and expand the lighting program all the way down the street. So it should be a very nice program and a great draw for both Cottonwood and the Old Town area.
And I think the council owes a debt of gratitude, so to speak, to Yavapai Broadcasting, who is, for the actually kind of small amount we're paying, I think they're taking on a pretty large part of the burden.
Yeah.
Mr. Pratt.
This includes Flash the Christmas dog and a home for Flash. That excited me.
Flashy dogs, huh?
And certainly in terms of their time, they have spent a tremendous amount of time on it.
And their expertise.
Yeah. And the other thing that I will share with the council is they were very complimentary about the cooperation and the enthusiasm from our staff. And they really have enjoyed working with our staff and really appreciated that, you know, the cooperation between the two. So it's a good private-public partnership.
Great. Vice Mayor, or did you have your hand?
Mr. Kessel will also have his display out at his house in Cornville for anyone that's interested.
And that's
great.
a magnificent display.
It's also good for our businesses because it brings more people downtown.
Right. And it brings more people to all of the city of Cottonwood. If we can get them to Old Town for special projects, they'll stop and eat and buy gas and maybe even stay overnight. So it benefits the entire city.
Exactly.
Councilmember Norman?
Are you ready for a motion?
We are.
I move to approve the expansion of the Old Town Holiday Light Program and the use of council contingency funds in the amount of $5,000 to support the program.
Second.
Councilmember Norman made the motion. Vice Mayor Pfeiffer seconded it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear a motion on the claims?
Move we pay the claims.
Second.
The Vice Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Norman seconded it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I move to adjourn.
Second.
The Mayor made the motion. The Vice Mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.